You know, there are such things as coincidences. There really are. I've had coincidences where, I'm on a flight and I happen to be sitting next to Alex Jones' lawyer just after Alex Jones attacks me.
That is a frickin' predator right there.
Okay, like that's a coincidence. I don't believe that there's any larger message for me to glean from being sat on a plane next to Alex Jones' lawyer. It's just a coincidence. But then sometimes you start to see coincidence after coincidence, and it starts to really not seem like a coincidence. And indeed, it is now hard to believe that there is anything short of a concerted effort to cover up elements of the January 6th Trump riot planning and communications and involvement of all sorts of different parties in and around the Trump administration. What am I talking about? Well, here's the latest news. January 6th text messages were wiped from phones of key Trump Pentagon officials. It is starting to be very difficult to believe that these are mere benign coincidences. Texts were deleted. They were transitioning to new devices at exactly this time after being told, preserve the text messages. The DOD wiped phones, all of the same group of people, and specifically at a time and related to January 6th. It's hard to believe in this number of coincidences. Let's look at what CNN reports. The Defense Department wiped the phones, wiped and flushed, guys, the phones of top departing DOD and Army officials at the end of the Trump administration, deleting any key texts from key witnesses to events surrounding the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. The acknowledgement that the phones from the Pentagon officials had been wiped was first revealed in a FOIA lawsuit American Oversight brought against the Defense Department and Army. The watchdog group seeks January 6 records from former Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller, former Chief of Staff Kash Patel, former Secretary of the Army Ryan McCarthy, and other prominent Pentagon officials. Miller, Patel, and McCarthy have all been viewed as crucial witnesses for understanding the government response to the riots and former President Trump's reaction. All three were involved in the Defense Department's response to sending National Guard troops to the Capitol as the riot was unfolding. There is no suggestion that the officials themselves erased the records. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Everyone involved who committed a crime should be in jail or prison. I'm not saying imprison people without due process and without finding them guilty. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there should be no exemptions here because of people's roles, whether it be in DOD or wherever the case may be. Everyday criminals get in trouble all the time for destroying evidence. White-collar criminals, often when it comes to tampering with or destruction of evidence, end up in a situation where prosecutors go, it's really hard to prove that they acted intentionally. Going to be very difficult to prove state of mind here. And yet we know it's not that difficult because everyday criminals, street criminals as they're sometimes called, get in trouble regularly for these exact same things. And there are just too many coincidences here to believe that this was not some kind of concerted effort. Now, you might recall that days before what was ultimately the last and final January 6th committee hearing, there was the idea that on a beautiful Tuesday, the House committee was going to get recovered text messages from these tranches of text messages that were deleted. And hours before the deadline, the revelation was not recoverable, not going to get them, sorry. And every aspect of this raises questions as to in which organizations were there foot soldiers, for lack of a better term, for the Trump riot cover-up. Now, we can't say that Secret Service, so part of this is related to Secret Service. Here we're talking about DOD. I'm not ready to say Secret Service was involved, but the longer it goes, it starts to get weird because on the one hand, we have Secret Service agents who supposedly said in the aftermath of Cassidy Hutchinson's devastating testimony about what happened on January 6th, we're willing to come in and testify under oath about all the lies Cassidy Hutchinson was telling. And I said at the time, well, great, get them under oath. But then we'll have competing under oath statements. Until then, all we have is nonsense. And then they never testified. And the House committee was welcoming them with open arms, and they never testified. That starts to get a little bit weird. Then we hear, well, the text messages involving the Secret Service also aren't recoverable. We can't give you anything. Sorry. Okay, it starts to get a little weird. Now we find out that the DOD was wiping phones. Starting to get even weirder. So I'm not pretending to have an answer. I'm not positing any particular allegation of a conspiracy. I'm merely saying there's too many coincidences here to believe that this is merely a coincidence. And there seem to be actors in multiple organizations, at multiple agencies, and multiple levels of this who don't seem to be forthcoming in the way that you would imagine and that you would hope government officials would be. That's where I will leave it. And the speculation can sort of go from there. If you have an idea as to what you believe took place here, find me on Twitter at dpacman and let me know who was involved and to what extent.